I have absolutely no idea why you enjoyed learning 20 minutes of useless car information on the Mazda Miata, but I am back. And today, we're diving into something different. We're diving into another bout of useless car information, but this time it's not about a car, it's about a car part. We're gonna be talking a little bit about coilovers in depth and for no reason in particular, because over the past probably 7 or so years, I have sold an absolute mountain of coilovers, which means I've seen brands come and go. I've seen good stuff stay around. I've seen marketing kind of flip things on its head and make standard stuff cool. And I just figured I would share it with all of you, which, by the way, I'm Alex Martini. Welcome to MartiniWorks. If you're looking to get your car ready for the season, go get your car parts over at MartiniWorks.com. We sell coilovers, wheels, tires, performance parts, intakes, and exhausts. It's all done right up here in Appleton, Wisconsin. We ship it out to you guys, and we absolutely love working with you. So we're just getting started. It means the world. Let's get into it, shall we? So there's a few things right out of the gate that we see all the time, just in like general coilover questions, like, will this fit? And how low can I go? I'm pretty sure that's a song. Do I need an alignment? Do I need camber plates? What are spring rates? What's the difference between this brand and that brand? So let's get right into it. The first question is will this fit? Most times, coilovers are going to be vehicle specific, meaning that the top hats or how they're mounted on the bottom of the coilover themselves is created specifically for a platform, meaning that as long as the title or the description says that it's for your vehicle, it is going to fit your car. Now, there are some really funky platforms, usually the older stuff, where it's a little bit tougher to decide if it's going to fit or not fit. And I will say there are some other platforms, particularly older Hondas, that require you to do some MacGyver stuff to make top hats work and things like that. But for 90% of you out there, the biggest thing I will say is if you need somebody to help confirm if it's gonna fit, just reach out to us in the chat bot. Now, how low can you go with coilovers? Coilovers are right in between lowering springs and air suspension. You're gonna see a budget for that to sit anywhere between $1,000 to $4,500, depending on how fancy you wanna get with coilovers. How low can you go though? Typically, you're gonna see anywhere from 1 to 4 inches of adjustability on any standard coilover. Sometimes it's gonna be less than 4 inches, but I will say most of the time it's between that 1 and 4 mark. Now, there are coilover options, like BC Racing offers an extreme low, which essentially gives you like an extra inch. I think Fortunato does something similar. It will also give you about an extra inch. So you can take that 1 to 4, turn that to 2 to 5. Now, some people will use coilovers to lift their vehicles as well. You're not gonna see a lot of people do that, but you can get some ride height out of it as well. Usually I wouldn't say anything more than probably realistically an inch to an inch and a half. If you get more than that, that's great, but a lot of times I do try to stay away from making it too close to where your threads end in your lower mount, because ultimately you're putting a lot of strain on not a lot of metal. Now, do you need an alignment? Now, Dakota has an infatuation with alignments. He has a religion with alignments. I believe while the rest of us are either waking up late on Sundays or you get dragged to go to church with your parents, Dakota goes to the Church of Alignments because he believes anytime you change out your wheels and tires or your suspension, you should get an alignment. And to that, I say you probably should. I would recommend it, but you're probably not going to. Alignments help a lot because when you're changing up the coilovers, you're changing up the overall suspension geometry of how the car behaves. So while the part itself is really easy to install, in fact, I would say it's one of the easiest suspension modifications you can do to a car, it's also playing around with so much more. It's playing around with how your car is gonna handle body roll. It's gonna change on how your spring rates are gonna perform. It's actually, if you have some sort of electric damper system that you're still trying to keep enabled, you know, that's going to change how it behaves inside the car. So with that being said, an alignment is something I would really recommend that you do after you get your coilovers installed or with your aftermarket wheels and tires, because it's going to make the whole car feel a little bit better. Next question we get asked a ton. Do we need camber plates? So you don't need camber plates. A lot of entry-level coilovers, BC Racing, for instance, offers their front camber plates are standard on the kits where it's allowed. So cars like our Nissan Z, our 2023, it has camber plates in the front because it could be mounted with front camber plates. Not all cars are going to come equipped with those camber plates though. For instance, the Honda AP1, AP2 typically isn't going to have a camber plate adjustment at all because it's just the way that it is. But that doesn't mean that you can't get that if you want it. Typically what I'll say, you don't really need to mess with camber too much if you're just looking to lower your car. If you're going into track and things like that, you can, but in that point, you're probably reaching out to us anyway. I will say though, biggest mistake I see and hear all the time is, hey, I got camber plates on the front, but I didn't get camber plates on the back. I need to be able to camber out my rear. Those are available, but a lot of times coilover companies do not offer that stuff for free. BC Racing, for instance, has it as an option, but it's gonna be an additional cost. On the front, it's standard. On the rear, it's optional. Now, the biggest question I think I get all the time, especially in the comments, which if you have questions, just throw them down there. We'll answer them. We'll try to help you out. We'll send you links. We'll do whatever we can, okay? Because coilovers are kind of a very confusing thing, just like tires. Maybe we should do some of this on tires because they're all just round pieces of rubber. Why are some coilovers so cheap from some people and so expensive from others? We have seen coilovers at $400, $700, $1,200, $1,400, $1,700, $2,200, $2,600, $3,400, $4,500. You get the point. We have seen every possible price range of coilovers, and some people will say, oh, it's because they sell direct to consumer. Raceland, that's kind of how they say it. They say because they sell directly to consumer, they have a cheaper cost to the consumer because they don't have a dealer trying to mark up or mark down. Typically what I can say is that at its biggest number, a dealer's probably going to add 30% onto a coilover cost, meaning that if the coilover is $400, you're probably looking at a $520 coilover if it was going through some sort of dealer program. So let's just say $600 to be fair. Even at $600, it is still a very cheap coilover. Typically what we like to say, we set the bar in terms of entry level or the lowest at Tane. Tane is going to be probably the most affordable, best entry level, easiest cost that you can jump into where I would be able to say and feel comfortable saying, yes, you can go get those. We've had a lot of experience with like the eBay coilover side of things, which is nothing more than just these random companies coming in and making coilovers for $280. And a lot of times they're all shit. The reason that they're not as good as some of the other stuff, even something like Tane, which is only $450, $550, is the fact that, number one, a lot of times the fitment is super bad on these cars. You guys remember I just talked about how in the beginning, vehicle coilovers are specific to those vehicle like kits, right? But with a lot of these really, really cheap coilovers, they're not as much. They feature like multi-holes in the bottom threads. They feature a top plate that can have the bolts put into different arrangements, essentially making it more universal, making it more modular, so to speak. But a lot of times by doing that, when you make something to try and fit everything, it fits nothing really well. So fitment is the number one thing that you're gonna see as a cost of going cheaper or going with what I would call just a no-name brand. The second thing I will say is there's a lot of things that you're gonna see on the coilover that make absolutely no difference. Sure, the metal of the lower body matters in my opinion. Sure, the camber plate on the top can be well machined or not well machined. The paint can be single stage or it can be anodized. There's a lot of like that small stuff we could talk about. At the end of the day, metal's metal. It all fucking looks the same. But there's two key things that are different. Number one is the actual oil that's going on inside of the coilover, and that's a big deal. What kind of oil is being used is going to help you understand the longevity. It's going to understand that when that shock gets hot, how is it actually going to behave? Because when liquid is toasty, it doesn't behave the same as when it's freezing. And in the same time, I do like to really take into consideration how is the shock actually assembled, the shims, all the stuff that goes in to make that piston do its job and essentially have that adjustability at the top or bottom. That sometimes is standardized across all of those really cheap kits, meaning that they're not built for a specific platform. They're just meant to fit in that platform, which are two different things. We went to Fortunato like a month ago, and when we did, I watched, I think, 5 different individuals assembling these Fortunato 500 or 510 coilovers, and it is a tedious ass process. I would rather watch paint dry than see somebody stack shims onto a piston that has to be assembled and then put into a machine where it's just kind of, I'm not even gonna to do the illustration, but you understand what I mean. And then they look at the numbers, they see if it's within variance, because they actually check to see if the shocks are all within variance. And if they're not, they gotta tear the whole thing apart and do it all over again. That's not happening with some of those more affordable coilovers, especially anything that is below $10. Now, where would you put the price ranges of things? Most people only use price to determine what coilovers they want to buy, which is kind of a shame, but I totally get it, because it's just like tires. None of it makes any sense. Everybody's using fancy terminology. Everybody's using the same adjustability mentions. Everybody's saying that they have a bunch of clicks and camber plates. So why is one $1,200 and why is the other $1,800? And that's the question we get asked a ton. If it's under $400 and it's not TANE, I can pretty confidently say it's garbage. It's not gonna do anything besides lower your car, which if that's all you want, then great. But if you plan on driving it and you plan on getting those coilovers warm, that's when you're gonna start to have a really wide range of behaviors. And a lot of times they'll start to squeak, they'll go out, they'll blow out, they're just not the greatest. TANE is where that floor is. Going up a step, I would say you're jumping into a $1,000 range. Now, one of the biggest ones that I know in that $1,000 to $1,200 range is BC Racing. You're gonna see that there are coilovers in this $600 to $900 range. A lot of those, a lot of those are rebranded Silvers coilovers. Silvers Coilovers is a huge coilover company. They're a manufacturer overseas, and I wanna say they're in Thailand or Taiwan. I can't remember. I'll put it up on the screen so that you guys know, but Silvers is huge. Absolutely massive. They even have their own brand that they brought into the States that I think they brought in through Import Image Racing. Now, with that being said, they're still a really great coilover. They're good. We haven't always had the best experience with them personally. I've had a lot more consistency and reliability with BC Racing versus throwing some Silvers on coilovers. That's just my opinion. Maybe it will change over time. But $1,000 to $1,200 is really where you're gonna wanna sit. You're getting a lot of peace of mind getting BC Racings. In my opinion, that's kind of like that mid-level, solid shot. BR Racing coilover is gonna give you adjustability. It's gonna give you a lot of customer support. It's gonna give you good fitment. It's gonna work. If you go up into the $1,500 to $1,700 range, you're probably talking about tracking your car. If you're spending that amount of money, you should be tracking your car. You should be driving your car. If you are spending anything above $1,500, your car should be used for something. If it's not, I'm gonna be really honest with you, I don't think you need Fortunato 500s or 510s. I think you can go into getting something with the BC BR Racing coilover and be happy as a clam. But if you start getting into the more advanced stuff or you want more adjustability on your coilover, then yeah. KWs have $2,300 coilovers or $3,000 coilovers. AST has it too. Those European brands are probably the most expensive out there, and that has a lot to do with the fact that their fitment is for BMWs and Audis and things like that. Now, speaking of European coilovers, we do sell KW, and we've talked about KW even when we didn't sell them. They were founded in 1992. They are super expensive, and if this matters to you, they're one of the only coilover brands that is still approved by the TUV or the TUV or however it is that you want to say it over in Germany. If you can modify a car in Germany, if you can have the German country tell you that your aftermarket car part is okay, that thing can go anywhere. It can do anything. You could send that to the moon and back. You could blow it up. Nothing could possibly be stronger than something that's TUV certified. I don't even know how to explain it. They're so stringent on this process. When we used to develop wheels, we actually wanted to go through that process to figure out if we could. And we have never been laughed at so hard in our lives. It takes like 5 years to just get certified in TUV. And it's not like, hey, we'll send you the schematic and we will digitally test this. No, they say, you will send us a mountain of the same exact SKU. Not different molds, not different widths, not different offsets. We will send you 20 or 40 wheels and we will beat the ever-living crap out of them for a very long time. And if they show even the slightest weakness, they're not TUV certified. The fact that KW's coilovers are TUV certified says something about it. They're also located in Germany. They have stuff all over the world, but that's a really big thing for some people. So if you are a European snob and you want another reason to brag about your KWs, there you go. I spent a lot of time in this conversation conversation talking about BC Racing, which is another huge one. BC Racing was founded in 1999. BC is not to be confused with Bob Conlon, who had a start of BC Racing, which if you go and you type in BC Racing Coilovers, you're going to find this Bob Conlon guy. This is not the same thing. BC Racing was started and is still manufactured in Taiwan. BC Racing is originally a Taiwanese company, and that's not a bad thing. They started their distribution into the United States and Australia, and actually their introduction in the United States is why they're so big. I gotta give massive props out to Cody Slack and that BC Racing team, because the team is actually inherently very, very small, and they have made this brand huge in America. Now, with that being said, they blew up a lot because of drifting. They got partnered up with Formula Drift way back in the early state with a lot of these drivers and just kind of locked in for the rest of the 2 decades. BC's got a bunch of different series. They have the BR, RM, DS, ER, HM, and ZR coilover. And if you're wondering which one you need, again, I'd highly recommend BR if you're just building a street car. RM or DS is going to be good for if you're starting to get into like the track stuff and you want a little bit of that customization. But the ER series is like, in my opinion, what you would compare the Fortunato 510 to. This is something that you're going to be building into an actual track coilover. It's a 2-way coilover. You can adjust it independently from each other, which is absolutely awesome. I've talked a lot about adjustability. I've talked a lot about different types of companies, BC Racing and Fortunato and Tane and KW, and you might be asking yourself, that doesn't really help me understand why some of this stuff is so expensive. And I'm going to give you a few examples as to what makes it more expensive or cheaper and what to keep your eyes out for. Number 1, shock oil will always matter more than pretty much anything else. Outside of the spring itself, the oil that they use is huge. Number 2, if you're looking for something that's going to give you a feeling that is noticeably different, you want to be looking for the words digressive piston. A digressive piston is essentially that. It's a digressive way that the oil is going to flow through based on the impact of the coilover. And it is butter in how it feels. It feels just like I don't even know how to explain it. Oreos and milk. It's like a margarita with tahini on the rim. It's like a steak that's medium rare. It is perfect. It's your favorite pair of jeans. It's the best Sunday night cruise you could possibly imagine. Digressive pistons are the future. BC Racing has it. Fortunato has it. I will die on this hill that is an incredible, incredible part of a good coilover. You're going to see people talk about rebound and compression. That stuff matters. How you actually measure that, though, and how you're going to analyze that is completely up to you. You will play with those a lot more than you think, and they do make a pretty big difference, especially as you go into an actual coilover that's good. I can't even go into the mountain of times that we've torn apart like $300 coilovers, and those adjustability things don't do anything. So if you are looking to really understand your coilover, go out there, drive it, play with what you have for your compression and your rebound, and you are going to notice a really big difference. I think the biggest thing for me with coilovers is that they allow you to do something. There's a ton of history. Tane started it. It got adjusted and supported. European companies like KW came on board with the idea, brought it to the street, and then BC Racing really amplified it and made it huge. Fortunato came on board and said, we want to really drive into track racing. BC Racing really went into drifting, and the mountain of brands continues to grow and grow and grow. Oh, I have one more thing. Bonus tip. What are Swift Springs? Super common question. Swift Springs are this upgrade that you see all the time, and you're going to get asked by even our team, hey, do you want a Swift Spring upgrade? It's essentially just a different spring, and that spring is lighter. It can handle more of an adjustability in terms of the compression. It can do that better. And also something that's really, really interesting is that the metal that they use and how they actually, I don't know if the word twine is correct, but how they actually get that spring to take shape is proprietary. Only Swift Springs are allowed to have that composite and have that actual setup. We were taking a look at this at Fortunato, and we looked at a coilover with Swift Springs versus stock springs, and you can actually see the spring can do more with less. It has less metal, it's lighter, and it's anodized, and it still has the same spring rate as something that required more metal, is heavier, and a little bit uglier. One thing I'll always always say with Swift Springs on if it's something that you want or not want, it all comes down to you. If you're really trying to dial in a proper good experience, I will say Swift Springs are almost always worth it, but you don't need them. So don't feel pressured into buying them just because you think you should. I would say if you're just doing some road driving, you probably don't need them. If you're sliding it around on the track and you want to really dial in that suspension, then yeah, I would do it. If you guys have any questions on coilovers, let me know below. I love this stuff. I love helping people with the car part side of this thing, and we've done it for a really long time. So if you are looking for aftermarket coilovers, lowering springs, go get your car parts over at MartiniWorks.com. We'll put the link below for you as well. It would mean the world to have your support. I'm Alex Martini. Let us know what other useless car information you would like to know, because all of this at the end of the day was just more useless car information. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next time.